So let me switch to, so why do we look at active transportation? Why do we, as researchers, look at where are things happening, what is important? Because it makes a difference. And I won't bore you with a lot of academic details. We have academic conferences for that. But the main point of some of this research that we've been doing, and this was a big study where we looked across 6 continents, 14 different cities. And if you compare how active people are in these cities, the big point, the big message we want to take to you here is it makes a difference where you live. It's not just you as individuals who make a choice if you choose to take the car today or if you walk or cycle to your workplace. No, actually, the environment you live in, how that has been planned, how it has been structured, it makes a big difference. And if we looked across all these cities, we could see that it was making 70 to 90 minutes difference per week. And if you then know that the international recommendations for physical activity are to be active as an adult for 150 minutes a week, then all of a sudden, getting more 60, 90 minutes per week, more activity just by living in a place that's designed and created to provide more activity, that makes a huge difference. All of a sudden, it's hard to go to do exercise at the gym or the sports club twice a week and gain the same amount of activity. While if you live in a place that's conducive for activity, it's easy. It comes natural. Big difference. So it's not just individual choices, individual behavior, which, as we heard before, is really hard to change. But we can do something as a community to help with that. More recently, we've taken some of those thoughts international, said, okay, well, how can we compare cities across the world? We looked at 25 cities. We're hoping to look at many more. And again, what we showed there is we can, as scientists, we can measure how well cities are doing. We can look at their characteristics. We can determine, okay, which cities will be good for physical activity, both in terms of how they look, how they're designed, but also in terms of the policies that they have in place. Where are the chances for success in the short term? And Perth is not on this list yet, but hopefully in the future can be one of the cities there as well. And I'll stop this for a second. So what does physical activity actually look like? And as a scientist and a gadget person, I like my measurement tools. So we do a lot of measurement studies where we quite literally try to go out and measure how physically active are people and where does that physical activity happen. So what I've brought with me here, and I'll start it in a minute, is a little animation of about 160 children aged 10 to 14 in the city of Copenhagen in Denmark, where we've given them a belt with a GPS device to track where they are, and at the same belt there was a little sensor that registers how active are they. And if you look at, there will be a lot of dots appearing in a little minute, and the darker the dots, the more active they are. This is a day in a life of 160 children, and I would like you to have a look at where are the dark dots appearing. What is happening? You can see the timer is there in the bottom corner. Kids are waking up. It's quite easy to see where they go to school. Pay attention sort of around 11:30, what's happening there. I have no idea what the one at the bottom is doing there. They're coming off school again. There are some places here, you'll see in a minute. Yep, see there's one being active there at the sports fields. Slowly trailing off, you see quite a few dots disappearing. 10 to 14-year-olds, some of them are up quite late, still being active, not quite sure what's happening there. So if I now ask you, and you've seen it, this is a day in a life, this is how a day of physical activity looks when we measure it. Where did you see the activity? Where did you see the activity? What were the things? Where did you see the red dots? A little bit in the green spaces, yes. Any other things where you saw them? School, especially during school recess, big one. But why we're all here? What was the other very, very big one? That was very clear. To and from school, transportation. So that is, if we put numbers on it, and we did that for these kids. So this was about 500 kids. We did this. Transportation to and from school is a very big one. So for Danish kids in this context here, it's about 20% of their daily activity happens during that transport. There's another about 40% happening in schools. So those are very important locations for kids and young people to be active. And this is a slide or a figure I stole from a new international organization that is very much having the same purpose as we're all here for, trying to promote active transportation. And they have come to the number and saying, okay, well, 60% of urban trips in the world are less than 5 kilometers. Think about that. 60% are less than 5 kilometers. We can walk that in some cases, or we can definitely use our bicycle to do that. If we now think about e-bikes getting more and more popular, you can probably even go up to 10 kilometers. That's a huge number of trips that could be made without a car. And one of the things that as scientists, we know that it works. We know that getting people to be more physically active transportation is the big factor there. That is the thing that we can change. Behavior change is hard, but that's the thing that is doable for a lot of people. As I said before, going to the gym, going to the sports club 1 or twice a week extra, in addition to what many of us are already doing, it's hard. Walking a few times more a week for 10 minutes, for most people, it's so much easier to integrate in our daily lives. So that's one of the things we know as scientists, it works. So how do we get people to do it? One of the things, I think hopefully that's one of the reasons why I'm speaking here today as well, is because of initiatives like Your Move. It is we need to demonstrate that it works. We need to demonstrate the great examples, the champions, show people it can be done. But as scientists, we also often get asked, well, but we don't want to get rid of the cars in our shopping street. They're important for our businesses. Well, as scientist, I know that it's not. Actually, more business will come to you if you have people that walk or cycle there because they spend more time there. It's not that difficult. But the perception is often negative. So one of the things we've done together with my colleagues here at the University of Western Australia and Thalaton Kids Institute is try to create some debate, try to visualize how could, for example, shopping street, how could they look? Taking some examples from Perth here, how could a street like this, and I've forgotten which street this is, you might remember. Exactly, you know that. So how could a street like Oxford Street, how could that look if you take away the cars? Is all of this realistic? Probably not. It has been a great tool to create debate and discussion. Is this how it should look? Again, probably not. But if this can start a discussion about it, how it could go from this, which is normal in most of our streets, to something like this, we started a discussion. Something similar we've done for looking at how can you create streets that are more friendly for kids. A concept from Barcelona in Spain they call super blocks, where they say, okay, we have so many streets that connect each other, how about we prioritize some of them for cars, whereas we say in others, here we prioritize walking, cycling, creating more space for children. The space is there, it's just a matter of priorities. It's a choice. Where you go, for example, and again, this is a street here in Perth. Does anyone recognize this one? Probably not directly. We can check which one it is. It's a suburban street. Many similar streets like this. It could look like this. And again, is this how it will look if we make the change? Probably not exactly, but it can spark debate. And I think that sparking the debate, trying to, as you have all been showing here, be an inspiration, I think that's one of the important parts that we together can play, where we need the professional athletes, the cyclists like Jay. Did you, by the way, did you take part of the Tour de France? Did you cycle the big ridge in Denmark?
No, I didn't.
You didn't. So I had meant to ask about that before. So some of you might have seen the pictures in the television a few months ago. For some strange reason, the Tour de France doesn't actually start, at least not every year, in France. It sometimes starts somewhere else. This year, it started in Denmark. And we used the sports event where all the cyclists were there and all the helicopters with the cameras were there, very cautiously to see, okay, well, how can we show and visualize the cycling culture that spans from the professional cyclists that can inspire us to everyday cycling that everyone can do. So we need to go from that inspiration to what city governments, what politicians can do to help us make this change, to inspiring, to discussing, to changing our environment so that it becomes easier for everyone to be more active every day. So just to sum up, and this is a very academic thing to do, active transport makes a difference. City planning, again, makes a huge difference in that. It's not just our individual choices, it's very much how our cities look. But obviously, it's not just about how the streets look, it's also about where are the destinations. If you live in a neighborhood where there's only homes and residences, well, why would you cycle? There's no destinations to go to. So that's also something to think about, mixed land use, integrating different functions in neighborhoods. The 15 or 20-minute neighborhood concept that, in particular in Melbourne, is something that is really popular. I'm not quite sure what the status is here in Perth. I might hear some more about that later. But those are some of the directions that we as scientists think are very promising. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Jasper.